From the News Center area of downtown Detroit, it's the Mitch Albom Show with Mitch Albom and Ken Brown. Now, here's Mitch.
I had a wonderful opportunity to get to know our next guest, first through a letter and emails, and ultimately through a phone conversation, and finally through the words of a wonderful book that he has written at a time when a lot of people wouldn't be writing or wouldn't be thinking about anything like that. His name is Mark Weber. He's a U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, and he has had a soaring career in the military. He was tapped for a high-profile job over in Afghanistan as a military advisor, and then a routine physical revealed that he had stage 4 intestinal cancer. He was only in his late 30s, father of 3. And what he's done over the last couple of years since finding this out is really, to me, the definition of courage. He has faced this straight on, and at one point he began writing a letter to his sons about who he wanted them to be. He knew they were going to face growing up without him in their lives. That letter ultimately swelled into a book, a wonderful book called Tell My Sons. And Mark Weber is on the line with us right now. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Mitch. Well,
we've now reached the ultimate. We went from letter to email to phone call to book and now radio program.
I know. This is just great. And
So tell our audience, I know a lot of the story, but tell our audience sort of the stages you went through from the day you went in for that physical and when they broke that news to you to where we are right now in your life.
Yeah, it's, it's almost cliche to say that this is surreal, but it is truly unbelievable. And for an Army officer who's been deployed to combat and around the world, it's just incredible for me to still be here. I did not think that I would be alive, and my doctors continue to tell me that I shouldn't be. Which, sounds flattering at first, but then, you do get tired of hearing that after a while.
Yeah, but I am still here. This was, 2 years ago now?
Yeah, it was 2 years ago. It was July 2010, and it was right after General McChrystal had been fired, and General Petraeus had been tapped to take his place, and I got an email that day asking me if I wanted to join the team. And I had worked together with General Petraeus before, so, I was... you're reserved as an officer, but it's kind of like a firefighter and fire. Your
get charged
fires
up.
are why you exist.
Right.
So
and then you had the doctor's appointment.
Yeah, 2 weeks later, bam, stage 4. The doctor said that it looked like a grenade had gone off inside of me. He didn't even know how I was still standing.
And yet, were you feeling bad at that point? Is that why?
No, I had been running 3 days a week prior to that, and I had moved this huge pile of mulch. And the doctor was his mouth was open. He said a normal store of iron in the body is a measurement between 150 and 300. He said yours is at 2.
Wow. And so suddenly you go.
The soldier in me is impressed.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, geez, I'm right at the cliff's edge.
Now your children at the time were how old?
10 and 14.
10 and 14.
I have twin 10-year-olds.
And 14.
And a 14-year-old boy.
And how hard was it to tell them and others in your family that you weren't expected to live?
Well, this is when I first started learning the concept of how I handle things differently than other people, because I found myself consoling my parents and my brothers and saying, look, this is, life is unfair, but I'm not dead yet.
Right.
So what are we going to do about it is my focus. And with the boys, 2 of them are introverts. And thank God one is an extrovert, so I know what's going on inside of them, because he cried at, I guess, what you would call appropriate times.
Right.
Just heaving cries of, I don't want to lose my... So, that was painful. That was really hard. Everything that you could possibly imagine it would be is what it was.
How did it change your focus in terms of, and how quickly did it change your focus about what was important in life? What did you drop? What did you gravitate towards?
Nothing really changed for me. I don't know if that sounds odd, but for example, people ask me, did you start a bucket list? I say yes, at 19. Because I think that's when you should start your bucket list. You shouldn't wait till the end of your life. And, as far as priorities, well, there's the obvious reprioritization, but I had no choice about what I was going to reprioritize. I went to the hospital for a massive surgery within 2 weeks. And my boys and my wife and I, we've had the what-if conversation, 5 or 6 times throughout my career about, what happens if Dad doesn't come home and how much I'm counting on you boys to carry the load here at home when Dad's away. And that's a heavy responsibility. It's not fair to put that on you, but this is our reality.
Now, your boys are 16 and 12?
Now, yes.
And as we're talking to Lieutenant Colonel Mark Weber, and put together a book that started as a letter to his sons about what was important, what life had taught him, what courage and fear had taught him, in particular, obviously you can't talk about the whole book in a short period of time, but think for 1 second, I got to do a brief traffic break here, about the maybe 1 or 2 biggest lessons that if kids' retention rate, if your kid's retention rate is the standard kid's retention rate, what do you hope that they most hold on to from this book? Talking to Lieutenant Colonel Mark Weber here, his book, Tell My Sons, a letter to his kids after he realized that he might not be around for very long with stage 4 intestinal cancer. So I asked you if you wanted them to retain 1 or 2 of the lessons that you put forth for them in the story, what would it be? Yeah,
that's an easy question because I had to have that as my azimuth. So, my overall message to them in the book is, we're surrounded by tragedy. It's everywhere. And it's cliche to say that life isn't fair. It isn't fair for any of us. And mine happens to be a pretty big unfairness, but it's still just unfair. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? That's what you've got to face. What are you going to do at the time that you've got, that you've been given? And you'll find happiness if you face life that way. And as I wrote, I wanted to talk about subjects that unite all of us. After all, I wrote this for them for ages, at all of their ages as they grow up, because I still have my dad, and I'm 40 now. And so I want them to have my side of the conversation at that age as well. And so it was a challenge for me, but that's what I wrestled with. I wanted it to be a message, not for now, because they have me right now, and they'll remember me for a couple of years. But what happens when they turn 18? What happens at 25? And I want them to see the embarrassment and the failures that I faced, as well as the successes. And I wanted this to be a book that wouldn't be painful for them to pick up.
Right.
So, I make it as much about humor and tears of joy as well as tears of sadness.
How do you face each day here? Now, you're on borrowed time, to use this sort of expression, right? I mean, your doctor keeps going, you're still here?
Absolutely.
How do you face the possibility that one of these days, and I'm so glad it's not today, and I hope it's not for 100 years, one of these days the news will be bad? How do you go through a thing when you wake up in the morning? I think, for example, I spent time with my old college professor, Morrie Schwartz. And
I remember that. I remember what you're talking about.
He used to say, well, obviously I'm going to die from ALS, and that's a given, but I don't know when. But when I wake up in the morning, I give myself 45 minutes to howl at the injustice of it all. I mean, cry, scream, weep, act like a baby. And when 45 minutes are up, I don't know why he picked 45, not 35, not 65, but 45 minutes, and that was it. And then he said, that's it for the day. I'm not feeling sorry for myself until tomorrow when I have my 45 minutes. Do you approach it similarly?
I do, and I call it, it's not 45 minutes for me, and I don't fault those who take that time, but I've called that take a knee moments. Mm-hmm. And I've encouraged my boys and my wife to do the same thing, that it's okay when you're sad or angry or whatever you're feeling to take a knee. That's what we do in combat when the patrol needs to stop. But you cannot stay in that place. You'll die in that place. There's no good that can come from you staying in that place. So do it, but then you've got to get up and move out. I mean, that's how I tackle I open my eyes and the first thing I think is, I'm still here. Because the only thing that really makes me afraid is the day that comes when my wife wakes up and finds me there. And I hope I die in my sleep. I mean, if there's a wish I have, it's not to endure a painful end.
Right.
But I found that as long as I keep moving, and I know you can appreciate this, when you're focused on other people's challenges and you're focused on helping them get through theirs while you go through yours,
right,
there's this peace and strength that comes from it that is just, I don't know what to call it. It's just there.
It's probably the essence of life.
I think so, and I want to teach my boys that. And this is, we call these in the Army opportunities to excel. And so writing this book and being able to talk to people in whatever size group, in fact, I'm hoping you invite me out there sometime.
Anytime.
We can tag team someone.
Anytime. The invitation is open. Actually, Kenny, so there was a little cross-communication here when Kenny was putting the show list together, and your name is on for this segment, 6 o'clock segment, and it says in studio. And I'm going, wait a minute, did I miss something here? Is Mark Weber coming in here? Because if so, why didn't I have him for lunch? So, because you're in Minnesota right now, right?
I am, yeah.
Yeah. Well, anytime you want to come here and pay us a visit, by all means. Your book is inspirational. It's a wonderful story. And as I say, I've gotten to know Mark through like one letter and then one email and a follow-up email, and I put him back and a follow-up email. We kind of became email pals a little bit. And then he said, hey, I got this idea, for a book. What do you think? And I said, well, send it along. Take a look at it. And I got to tell you, it's not me only, because I looked at your book. First of all, Robin Williams wrote the foreword. I'm thinking, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I help Mark? He got a hold of me, and sure, maybe my name could help it a little bit. Yeah, my name is like 40th on the list here. You got Mondale, Rumsfeld, Robin Williams. I mean, I don't know how you get to all these really well-known, famous people, but you must have a very good call waiting or call answering device.
I've crossed paths with these people in life. I mean, Robin Williams I worked with in 2004 on a USO tour. And John Elway, he's in there too.
Yeah.
And, that's the only USO tour that he did. And he said he'll never forget that experience. And having lunch and breakfast with these guys, and I imagine that you're along these same lines too, that when you sit down with people like you, who are these world-known names, you realize that they and you put your pants on one leg at a time like the rest of us. And you face the same challenges and you have the same hardships, and we're all just trying to get through it together.
Trust me, you put your pants on way better than Mitch puts his.
Does he jump into his?
Yeah, he jumps into his.
No. I was going to say, except for those mornings where you're a little confused, you try to put them on over your head, and it just doesn't work. Well, I encourage everyone to get a hold of this book. It is so inspirational. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry, but it is a story of one of our citizens that should be celebrated, someone who's dedicated his life to helping the country through the military and has dealt with this tough news in as brave and courageous and face-front fashion. And I think, it's one thing to face disease with courage. A lot of people do that, and my hat is always off to them and remain so. It's another thing to take it public and reach out to people, because with that comes a lot of advice that you don't necessarily want, a lot of sympathy that you don't necessarily want. A million people out there going, "Oh, I'm so sorry," but you've handled all of this beautifully, and so you can get the book through any of the online places like Amazon.com or Barnes and Noble, and also it has its own website as well. Tell My Sons. Is it .com? TellMySons.com.
Previews for each chapter if you want to check it out. The biggest response I've got back from that is they read the first two previews and then they want to stop because I give just enough, and they want to keep reading. So that's encouraging.
You've already figured out the book business better than most in it. So nicely done, Mark.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure to have you on the program, as it's been my honor to get to know you. Sometimes people just introduce themselves into your life and you don't know how or why, and I don't know why Mark decided to reach out to me or send an email. Thank goodness it found its way through, because many emails do not. But thanks to my wonderful assistant Kerry, who keeps an eye peeled for particularly
my battle buddy.
She's wonderful, and she really brought your note to my attention, and we've been long distance pals ever since. So God bless you for this holiday season and your family as well. And best of luck with this book, and we'll continue to talk. And the invitation is open to come here at any time.
Thanks a lot, Mitch. Your words are very kind, and it has been my honor to cross paths with you. Thanks.
Lieutenant Colonel Mark Weber, Tell My Sons is the name of the book, and really, this is not like a book interview. This is a life interview. This is someone who we could all learn a lot from. He's really remarkable.